There's a version of her you saw every day. Composed. Capable, slightly out of reach. The woman who ended it without her voice breaking, who answered your last message politely, who seems to be handling all of this so much better than you are. That version of her is real, it's just not the only one. Because there is another version that exists for a few hours every night, in a room you'll never see, and she has spent her entire adult life making sure nobody meets her. I want to be careful here, because there's a lot of content designed to sell you hope, and this isn't that. What I'm going to describe isn't a fantasy about her lying awake regretting everything. It's what sleep researchers, attachment scientists, and psychologists who study emotional suppression have actually documented about what happens to a person like her between midnight and 4 in the morning. The findings are strange, they're specific. And once you understand them, a lot of things she's done, the silence, the 1 a.m. message, the story she watched and never replied to, stop looking like cruelty and start looking like something much sadder. Let's start with why the woman you knew during the day was never the real one. 1. Her composure is an operation, not a personality. You spent a long time believing she was simply built differently. That she was one of those people who genuinely doesn't get overwhelmed, who can walk away from things cleanly, who doesn't lie awake. She isn't. There's research that shows exactly what her calm actually costs. In one experiment, psychologists asked people to think about a painful breakup and then to deliberately push those thoughts away. Then they gave them a second task, but for half of the participants, that task was deliberately made mentally demanding, eating up their concentration. When the mind had capacity to spare, the avoidant participants suppressed beautifully. No intrusive thoughts. They even showed a positive, confident view of themselves. When the mind was loaded down, the whole system collapsed. The thoughts they'd buried came flooding back. And underneath them, the researchers found something the same people hadn't shown minutes earlier. A bruised, negative self-image that had been sealed away the entire time. That's the finding I need you to hold on to for the next 20 minutes, because everything else follows from it. Her composure is not a trait, it's a process. It runs on mental fuel, and it works. Genuinely works. As long as there's enough fuel in the tank. Which is why the daytime version of her is so convincing. Daytime has structure. Meetings, deadlines, her mother calling, traffic, groceries, 100 small demands that give her something to point her attention at. Every one of those is a reason not to feel anything. She isn't pretending during the day. The machinery is genuinely running. You couldn't understand how she could look so unaffected. Now you know. You were watching a system operating at full power. Now consider what happens to that system when the demands stop, the phone goes quiet, the last light goes off, and there is nothing left in the room to point her attention at except the thing she's been pointing it away from all day. 2. What actually happens to her brain after midnight? In 2022, a team of sleep researchers led by Andrew Tubbs published something in the journal Frontiers in Network Physiology that they called the mind after midnight hypothesis. Their argument is that being awake in the hours when your body expects you to be asleep isn't just tiring. It changes what kind of mind you have. Pulling together evidence across neuroscience and behavioral data, they described a predictable set of shifts during nocturnal wakefulness. Attention drifts toward negative material. Mood declines as the circadian system winds down. The brain's reward and punishment calculations get skewed. And crucially, the prefrontal systems, the part of the brain responsible for restraint, planning, and holding yourself back, become disinhibited. Read that last part slowly, because of what it means for her specifically. The thing that keeps her walls up is executive control. Redirect the thought. Change the subject internally. Don't open that photo. Don't type that message. It's effortful, top-down, deliberate suppression, and it is run by exactly the machinery that goes offline in the hours after midnight. So this isn't poetry, it's mechanics. At 2 p.m., she can think about you for a second and steer away from it before it lands. At 2 a.m., she cannot. The steering has gone soft. The same memory arrives and there's nothing in place to intercept it. This is also why nighttime feelings can be so much more extreme than anything she'd feel about you in daylight. Not more true, more extreme. Negative material gets amplified. Consequences look smaller than they are. Restraint is weaker, and it explains the single most confusing thing you've experienced since it ended. How she can send you something warm at 1 in the morning and be a completely different person by 10. Those aren't two faces of a manipulative woman. They're two different neurological states of the same frightened one. 3. She is not sleeping as well as you think. You've probably pictured it, you lying awake at 4 a.m., staring at the ceiling. Her asleep somewhere, untroubled, having gotten over it in a fraction of the time it's taking you. In 2024, researchers published a large multi-level meta-analysis pooling studies on adult attachment and sleep. What they found was that attachment avoidance was associated with poorer self-reported sleep quality. And this is the detail that matters. With taking longer to fall asleep. Longer to fall asleep, that's not a statistic. That's a woman lying in the dark with nothing to do. And notice the trap she's built for herself. During the day, distraction is everywhere. In bed, in the dark, with no screen and no task, distraction is the one thing she cannot manufacture. The gap between lying down and losing consciousness is the only unstructured time in her entire 24 hours. It's where the thinking happens, because there's nowhere else for it to go. There's something else in the research worth knowing. When psychologists analyzed around 1,000 dreams collected from adults keeping month-long dream diaries, they found that attachment avoidance showed up in the content. Avoidant wishes, distanced and negative representations of other people. The pattern doesn't switch off when she loses consciousness. It's written into the material. And in an earlier study of dream recall across attachment styles, the avoidant participants remembered the fewest dreams of anyone. Sit with how complete that is. She doesn't only avoid you when she's awake. She avoids you in her sleep, and then she avoids remembering that she did. But here's the part that should stop you from feeling any satisfaction about this. If you were still together and she couldn't sleep, she'd have someone breathing beside her. Now, when the thing she can't stop thinking about at 1 a.m. is you, there is precisely one person on earth she cannot call about it. That's not justice. That's just a person alone in a room she built herself. 4. She doesn't experience it as missing you. Here's where most people misunderstand what's happening, and it matters, because it's the reason she'll never say any of this to you. She doesn't lie there thinking I miss him. It doesn't arrive with a name on it. It arrives as restlessness. She gets up. She walks into the kitchen without needing anything. She opens the fridge and stands in front of it and closes it again. She picks up her phone, unlocks it, looks at nothing, puts it face down. She starts a series she doesn't watch. She reorganizes something at midnight. She feels vaguely irritated at nothing in particular. She might tell herself she's just wired, or stressed about work, or coming down with something. There is a feeling underneath all of it, and it has a precise shape, and she will not look directly at it. Because for a woman with this history, naming the feeling is the dangerous act. I miss him is not just a sentence. It's an admission that another person has power over her internal state. That she needs someone. And needing someone is the exact thing her entire personality was constructed to make impossible. So she doesn't name it, she stays in motion instead. Every wandering, aimless, restless midnight behavior is a small refusal to finish the sentence. I want you to understand what that means about the last months of your relationship, too. When you asked her what was wrong, and she said nothing, she might not have been lying. There's a real chance she genuinely could not access it. When you asked her to tell you what she was feeling, and she went blank and said she didn't know, that blankness may have been the honest answer. The wall doesn't only keep you out, it keeps her out. You were asking a woman to read out a page she'd trained herself not to look at. 5. She replays the past, because the future is too dangerous. When she finally does think about you, notice the direction she thinks in. Not forward, backward. People who love securely daydream forward. They picture the trip, the apartment, the version of the two of you 5 years from now. Hope is comfortable for them because they've never had strong evidence that hoping gets punished. She has that evidence. So imagining a future with you is not a pleasant activity for her. It's an exposure. A future can be taken away. A future requires wanting something she might not get. Every forward-facing thought carries a small charge of dread. The past doesn't. The past is finished. Nothing in a memory can be withdrawn from her, because it's already happened. It's the only place she can be close to you without risk. So she goes there instead. And here's the part that will hurt you. It's never the big things. It's not the anniversary, or the trip, or the night. You said something enormous. Those moments had emotional volume, and anything with volume triggered her defenses at the time. She was already braced. It's the moments that got past the guard because they were too small to defend against. The way you laughed at something that wasn't even funny. A Sunday with nothing in it. Something you said in the car that you don't remember saying. The particular way you were in a kitchen. A silence between you that didn't need filling, which, for a woman who finds most silences unbearable, was a physical experience of safety she may never have had with another person. Those are the ones on the reel at 2 a.m., and she's watching them the way you'd watch footage of a place you can't go back to. Not planning, not deciding, just visiting. 6. The checking and why it traps you both. She watches your story. She doesn't reply. You've seen the little gray circle appear and disappear, and it's driven you half insane. Because how can someone look at your life every day and say nothing? Here's the honest answer. Looking costs her nothing. Replying costs everything. Watching is closeness without exposure. She gets proof you still exist, that you're okay, that you're still findable, while risking absolutely no vulnerability. There is no reply she could send that wouldn't be an admission. Silence keeps her safe and keeps you nearby, and for a woman with her wiring, that's the most comfortable arrangement available. Now, the part that isn't comfortable for anyone. In 2012, a researcher named Tara Marshall studied 464 people who had been through breakups and looked specifically at what monitoring an ex-partner online did to them. The result was unambiguous. Surveillance of a former partner was associated with more current distress about the breakup, more negative feeling, more longing for the ex, and less personal growth. It held even after accounting for offline contact and the circumstances of the breakup itself. So every night she opens your profile, she is measurably slowing her own recovery and feeding her own longing. She is keeping a wound open on purpose without ever admitting she's doing it. And now the sentence you don't want to read. That study wasn't about avoidant women. It was about people who have been left, checking on the person who left them. Which is to say, it was about you. Every time you check whether she's viewed it, every time you go looking for evidence in her posts, you are doing to yourself exactly what she's doing to herself. The research says it makes you more distressed, more full of longing, and less likely to grow. You are both awake at 1 a.m., looking at each other's lives through glass, and both of you are getting worse. 7. The message she typed and didn't send. Somewhere in the last few months, there's a very good chance she wrote you something and deleted it. Not once, probably several times. She opened the conversation, read back through the old messages, started typing something, looked at it, and closed the app. Sometimes she deleted it because it said too much. Sometimes because it said too little and felt pathetic. Sometimes she just closed the phone because her heart was going too fast. And on rare nights, the fuel runs out completely and she actually sends something. If she has, you'll recognize the shape of it. It's small. It's deniable. A meme. A photo of something you'd both find funny. Saw this and thought of you. Something so light she could survive you not replying to it. Understand what that is. That is not a casual message. That is a woman who has spent years believing openness is dangerous, doing the most exposed thing she is currently capable of, in the smallest form she could find. The message is tiny because that's the size of the risk she can afford. It cost her more than a paragraph would cost you. Then the morning comes. Sleep pressure clears. The circadian system swings back up. The prefrontal machinery comes back online, and with it every restraint that was missing 6 hours earlier. She looks at what she sent and feels exposed and slightly sick, and she goes quiet, not to punish you, not as a game. The armor simply came back on, and the woman who sent that message at 1 a.m. is genuinely not available at 9. That's the whiplash. Warmth, then nothing. And I know what it does to you, because you spend the following week analyzing a 14-word message like it's scripture, building an entire future on it, and then dying slowly as the days pass with no follow-up. So here is the rule, and it's the most useful thing in this video. Her night is not her decision. The 1 a.m. version of her is real, but it's the version with the brakes off. It tells you the feeling exists. It tells you nothing about what she will choose. Never mistake a crack in a wall for an open door. 8. What you actually do with this. Let me be direct, because this is the part where men go wrong. Knowing that she misses you at night is not a plan. It's just information. And it is the single easiest piece of information in the world to build a fantasy on top of. So 4 things. Never act at night. Not you either. Whatever certainty arrives at 2 a.m. is coming from the same disinhibited brain state we've been describing for 20 minutes. The message you're desperate to send at 3 will look like a stranger wrote it at 9. Write it if you need to. Don't send it before morning. Almost nothing good in your life will come from a decision made in that window. Stop the surveillance. For your sake, not for strategy. The research is clear about what monitoring her does to you. More distress, more longing, slower recovery. Mute her. Not blocked, not a dramatic announcement. Just quietly stop pouring fuel on it. This is the one variable in this entire situation you fully control. If she reaches out, answer like a warm adult and nothing more. Reply kindly. Reply briefly. Don't flood the opening she made with 3 months of stored-up feeling. That's the fastest way to close it. And don't punish her for the silence either. Just be steady, and then get on with your day. If she wants more, she now knows the door isn't locked. Set a real deadline. Not a fantasy, a date. Between now and then, you live. After it, you stop organizing your life around a phone that might light up. Because here's what nobody in this niche will tell you. She may miss you every night for 2 years and never once do anything about it. That's not a failure of your patience. It's the whole nature of the pattern. Longing and action are separated by a wall that only she can take down, and only if she decides to, and no amount of you waiting outside it has ever brought a single wall down in the history of this. Understanding her is not the same as waiting for her. You're allowed to do the first without doing the second. So, does she think about you at night? The honest answer, from the actual research, is almost certainly yes, and more than she would ever tell you. The suppression that holds all day runs out of fuel. The brain that keeps her steady goes quiet after midnight. She takes longer to fall asleep than you imagine. She replays the smallest, most ordinary moments you shared, because they're the only ones that got past her defenses. She looks at your life without touching it. And sometimes she writes something and deletes it, and lies there in the dark, feeling like a coward. That's real. You weren't imagining what you had. You didn't invent the closeness. You weren't too much. And now the harder half. None of that is a promise. A person can miss you profoundly at 1 in the morning and choose the safety of their own walls again at 9. Feeling is not the same as choosing, and love, on its own, has never been enough to build anything on. So let her have her nights. You take yours back. Sleep if you can. Live in the daylight at full volume. Become a man who is genuinely fine either way. And if she ever does gather the courage to knock, let her find someone who stopped waiting a long time ago and built something good in the meantime.